temple ruins rose from the fog like broken teeth, their ancient stones still bearing scorch marks from the ritual that had shattered the crystal of foresight 1,000 years ago. Kira climbed the crumbling steps with Marcus on her left and Senna on her right, their breath visible in the cold mountain air. Behind them, the sounds of Commander Vex's battalion echoed through the valley. Boots and armor and shouted orders growing closer with each passing minute. Aldrich waited at the temple entrance, his monk's robes torn and bloodied from the battle below. He held out the shard he had stolen from the throne's vault, the large fragment that Kira had needed to complete her understanding. "I was wrong," he said, pressing the crystal into her unmarked hand. "I spent 30 years believing the end should be welcomed, that transformation required destruction. But watching you fight for something beyond yourself showed me that my order's texts were incomplete." Kira took the shard and tucked it into her belt pouch without looking at it. "You betrayed us in the vault. You spoke with the throne official about letting the apocalypse happen." "I did." He met her eyes without flinching. "And I will spend whatever remains of my life making amends for that choice. But right now, Commander Vex is perhaps 10 minutes behind us, and you need to reach the altar before she reaches you." Marcus drew his sword and positioned himself at the top of the steps. "Go. I will hold them here as long as I can." "No," Kira grabbed his arm. "We do this together or not at all. I spent weeks pushing everyone away because I thought carrying this burden alone would protect you. All it did was nearly get us killed." Senna bounced on her heels, her eyes darting between the temple interior and the approaching soldiers. "She is right, you know. My shard has been showing me the same thing for days now. The prophecy is not meant for one person. It never was." They moved into the temple together, navigating fallen pillars and shattered floor tiles until they reached the central chamber. The altar stood at the heart of the space, a circular platform of white stone surrounded by channels carved into the floor. The channels had once held liquid crystal, Aldrich explained, conducting the energy of the original ritual. Kira unwrapped her marked hand and held it over the altar. The first piece pulsed brighter, and the shards in her pouch began to vibrate in response. Around them, the air shimmered, and ghostly images flickered into existence. Visions of possible futures, battles and celebrations, and quiet moments, all overlapping and competing for dominance. "I can see it now," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos swirling around her. "The prophecy is not about a single catastrophe. It is about a threshold, a moment when all possible futures collapse into one path. Someone has to hold the fragments together and choose which future survives." Marcus moved closer, his sword still drawn. "And what happens to the person who makes that choice? They anchor the new reality. They become part of it." Kira looked at him, and her eyes were clear. "They sacrifice themselves to give everyone else the freedom to choose their own paths." "Then I will do it." Marcus sheathed his sword and stepped toward the altar. "I have spent 8 years taking lives. Let me spend my death giving them back." "You cannot," Aldrich shook his head. "The first piece is bonded to Kira. Only she can initiate the joining." Senna pulled back her sleeve, revealing the shard embedded in her forearm. But she does not have to do it alone. My fragment has been teaching me to share the visions, to treat them like conversations instead of commands. If we all bond together, we can distribute the weight. Kira stared at her. You have carried that shard since you were 12 years old. That is why you never went mad. You learned to share the burden with the crystal itself. And now we can share it with each other. Senna reached out and took Kira's marked hand. I am not afraid. My shard showed me this moment months ago, and I have been waiting for it ever since. Marcus hesitated, then reached into his coat and produced a small crystal fragment, deep red and pulsing faintly. I bonded with this 3 weeks ago. I wanted to understand what you were experiencing, but I was too ashamed to tell you. Kira's jaw tightened. She looked at the shard in his hand, then at his face. You lied to me. I did, and I am sorry. He held out the fragment. But I am telling you now, and I am asking you to let me help carry this weight. The temple shook as an explosion echoed from the entrance. Commander Vex's voice rang through the ruins, ordering her soldiers forward. They had minutes at most. Kira looked at each of her companions in turn. Aldrich, the scholar who had betrayed her and returned. Senna, the reckless girl who reminded her so much of her mother. Marcus, the former inquisitor who had lied to protect her from his own shame. None of them were perfect. None of them had earned her complete trust. But they were here, and they were willing to share her burden. And that was more than she had ever allowed herself to accept. Fine, she said. We do this together. But if any of you die, I will find a way to bring you back just so I can kill you myself. Senna laughed, bright and sudden. That is the first joke you have made since I met you. I knew you had a sense of humor hiding in there somewhere. They formed a circle around the altar, each holding their shards. Aldrich began speaking the ancient words he had memorized from his order's texts, his voice steady and clear. The crystals responded, their light intensifying until the entire chamber blazed white. Commander Vex burst through the doorway with a dozen soldiers at her back. She was tall and lean, with close-cropped gray hair and eyes that held no mercy. Her sword was already drawn, and she pointed it directly at Kira. Step away from the altar, she commanded. The first piece belongs to the throne. Surrender it now, and I will grant you a quick death. Kira did not move. The visions swirled around her, showing her 2 clear futures. In one, she surrendered, and Vex used the fragments to give the throne control over all prophecy. In the other, she trusted her companions, and the crystal reformed not as a single stone, but as a network of connected pieces. The prophecy was never meant to be controlled, Kira said. It was meant to be shared. She pressed her marked palm against the altar, and the others did the same with their shards. The light exploded outward, and for one terrible moment, Kira saw every possible future at once. She saw the world ending in fire, in flood, in silence. She saw it transforming into something new. She saw herself dying, living, fighting, surrendering. And then she saw the choice. The apocalypse was not destruction. It was the death of possibility itself, futures collapsing until only one path remained, and humanity lost the ability to choose. The way to prevent it was not a single decision, but a commitment to keep futures open, to share the burden of foresight so no one person could control destiny. Kira made her choice. The crystal reformed in the air above the altar, but instead of merging into a single stone, it split into 4 equal pieces. One flew to Kira, one to Marcus, one to Senna, and one to Aldrich. Each fragment embedded itself in their palms, marking them as keepers. Vex screamed and charged forward, but Kira saw her attack before it came. She stepped aside, caught the commander's sword arm, and twisted until the weapon clattered to the floor. "It is over," Kira said. "The prophecy cannot be controlled anymore. It belongs to everyone now." Vex stared at her, her face pale and her breath ragged. "You have doomed us all. Without the throne to guide the future, chaos will consume everything." Maybe, Kira released her arm and stepped back. Or maybe people will finally learn to make their own choices. Either way, it is not your decision to make anymore. The soldiers lowered their weapons, uncertain, without their commander's orders. Vex looked at the fragments glowing in the keeper's palms, and something in her expression shifted. Not acceptance, but recognition that the battle was lost. She turned and walked out of the temple without another word. Her soldiers followed. Kira stood in the silence that followed, her new shard pulsing gently against her palm. Marcus moved to stand beside her, and Senna took her other hand. Aldrich bowed his head in something that might have been prayer. "What happens now?" Senna asked. Kira looked at the ruined altar, at the scorch marks left by the original shattering, at the ghostly visions still flickering in the air around them. She thought of Tam waiting in Saltmere, of her mother's grave on the hill overlooking the sea, of all the futures she had seen, and all the choices that remained to be made. "Now we go home," she said. "And then we figure out how to teach others to carry this weight without breaking under it." Marcus nodded slowly. "The throne will not stop hunting us." "No, but they cannot control what they cannot catch." Kira smiled, and it was the first genuine smile she had allowed herself in weeks. "And I am very good at drawing maps to places that do not exist." They walked out of the temple together, 4 keepers carrying fragments of a prophecy that would never again belong to any single power. The fog was lifting, and the morning sun painted the mountain peaks in shades of gold and rose. Kira did not know what the future held. For the first time in her life, that uncertainty brought her peace.